Yeah, we're good. We're good. So this is the story. We're going to say Pshat on Shavuos, the true Pshat. Yeah. And then we're going to talk about, what was the question in my clickbait? About Torah Nashemayim. Yeah, why it's not a good idea to believe in Torah Nashemayim. Okay. But first we have to say the Torah Menorah. So it's very important to understand the Pshat of Chag HaShavuos, because most people are very confused about it. I'm repeating what my friend Rabbi Devir Lehrer told me today, or wrote on his Facebook. And I'll repeat it in my way. And you'll understand something very, very simple. Okay? Everyone knows that there's this Yom Tov called Shavuos, and its name, as most names of things in the Torah, doesn't inform us much about what it is, because Shavuos just means weeks. So, Festival of Weeks, Chag HaShavuot, Festival of Weeks, very informative, helps us very much. Of course, you probably know why it's like, why people think it's called that way, because we counted 7 weeks to get there, which is, again, not very informative or useful. So we don't really know what this means at all. Right? Everyone knows. Then if you look in your machzeh, you'll see that it says Chag HaShavuos, Zman Matan Toreseinu. And that is, again, another problem for people that come to my class. They've all heard that this was entirely non-present in the text. Not only in the text, also like in the Mishnah it doesn't say. Nobody knows why anyone decided that Shavuos, we know why, but it's not, there isn't like any original source for the holiday being about the time of the giving of the Torah. That's one question. There is a bigger question than that, which we discussed last year in the Shir, that was Matzah Shavuos, I think, which is that that sounds like a weird reason to have a holiday in any case. Zman Cheresenu, the time of our freedom, or becoming free from Mitzrayim, becoming of our independence, that's a happy thing. Zman Simchasenu, which just means our happiness, but happiness for something, also makes sense. But the celebrating the day of the receiving of a Torah is a kind of weird thing to celebrate. I don't know much comparative culture or religion, but I don't really know of many other peoples or cultures, or even our culture, like in the Torah it doesn't say, right? But I don't know of many ideas of like celebrating the day of the signing of the law, or like of the giving of the law, or the Declaration of Independence. That's Man Cheresenu. July 4th is not when the Constitution was written. The Constitution was written 11 years later or something. There isn't a Constitution Day. Yeah, nobody knows of it, okay? Nobody makes a barbecue, so it doesn't count. So that's the question, very basic question. Two double question. One is that and I think this question goes together, because if you read the Chumash in a simple sense, everything over there makes sense, right? One of the secrets of the Torah is that if you read it without Rashi, it makes more sense. In other words, like most of the problems of like Talmud Mikra and so on kind of fall away. This is something that Rambam noted in his book, in the third part. Okay, this is not our subject today, we're going to skip it. But the Torah makes sense. And it does make sense to celebrate in the way that the Torah discusses things make sense. The Torah says you should remember the day that you went out of Mitzrayim. That makes a lot of sense. The Torah doesn't really give historical reasons for any other holidays. But this doesn't say in the Torah, and the reason it doesn't say in the Torah is because it doesn't make sense. Mikra means like pshat. The pshitish of Mikra is also like the pshitish of Olam, like the Olam Asiya in Kabbalah language, forever remembers last week's shir. And it makes sense, like people are happy, or in the Torah it says when you cut your harvest, right? Chag HaKutzir, you harvest your stuff, your land, your food, you're happy. Or maybe when you gather it into your house, and the 7th month you're happy, things like that. All the what we would term spiritual things don't say in the Torah, right? That's because those things don't make sense, right? Like Rosh Hashanah, Yom Adin doesn't say anywhere, right? Ramban talks about this. This is not something that we discovered. Doesn't say anywhere because that's a spiritual thing. Did you ever see that it's Yom Adin? Nobody knows about it, so it doesn't say in the Chumash. The Chumash says the only things that we could see, right? That's what the Ramban says. The Ramban doesn't say it. Has the opposite pshat. But anyways, that's why it doesn't say anything about Elam Haba or anything like that. So we have to understand this story. So this is like a problem with Shavuos, that it both doesn't say and doesn't make sense, and the reason why it doesn't make sense, the reason why it doesn't make sense because it doesn't say. No, the reason why it doesn't say is because it doesn't make sense. Every person understands, he sees harvest, or he sees gathering, or he sees independence, or he sees being delivered from some nest, like Chanukah, Purim, all those things make total sense. As everyone knows, they tried to kill us, they didn't succeed, therefore we eat. Makes total sense. But we got a law, therefore we eat, that makes no sense. And my right that it makes no sense because it doesn't say in the Torah. Right? And the Medrash it says, in the Gemara it says, doesn't even say in the Mishnah maybe, but the Gemara says things that don't make sense also. So it's not a kash, but the Chumash only says things that make sense. So that's why. When I say don't make sense, I mean don't make sense at first glance, right? I'm not saying it doesn't make sense. It's not obvious, it's not simple, not something you could explain to a Ben Chumash Lemikra, like the Lubavitch Rebbe like saying. Right? You're 5 years old, you don't understand that. So, this is baya. Okay? Now, if there's there's a real answer to this question, and I'm repeating from my friend Reb Devir today, that it's very simple. Okay? And if you get the basic answer to this question, you'll understand also how it does make sense to talk about Matan Torah, not in the way that most people talk about it, but in the real pshat, and Reb Shneur is also going to ask this pshat. So, like this. And the Torah does say what Shavuos is, and very explicitly, if you connect it to other psukim and other contexts that we know about this, understand why it's called the Festival of Weeks. What does it say in the Torah? It says in the Torah like this.
I just want to say, the Muslims do have a day, the last 10 days of Ramadan, celebrate the giving of the Torah. The Laylat, all these
okay.
year.
I don't know, but it's like Matan Torah. Like that was different. It's about Revelation. Okay, maybe. I wonder if it's a good analogy. I don't know enough about that.
In Hinduism also, that which I remember from the cult books I used to read, they also have a big thing giving the Muhammad, whatever it's called, the Bhavat.
Yeah, but that's not a book of law. Okay, so laws are a problem. Like, why would we be happy about it? Okay, so like this. The simple pshat is like this, okay? The simple story is like this, and it's so simple that the fact that we didn't realize it until today, because we're so brainwashed nebuch by all kinds of Torahs that nobody understands, and they forgot to say the things that we understand. So the simple pshat is like this. And the Torah it says like this. It says something about Chag HaMatzos, and then it says, if you look both in Parshas, what they call Parshas Emor, where the story of which Shavuos is said, the story of it, and in Parshas Rei, and it's not a slightly different way, but both of them say something like this. In the Midbar, for example, there was no Shavuos, right? There was no holidays. There was Pesach, because we're not Mitzrayim. The explicit story of Parshas Baloscha of the people celebrating Pesach in the Midbar. But other than Adam, they don't make sense. They didn't eat in the sukkah. They were in the sukkah all year. All year. Or sukkah Shavti. But these holidays are holidays of people living in their land. So in general, like I said, in Sefer Dvarim it's made explicit, and the entire Torah, even in Sefer Vayikra and Bamidbar, it's sometimes explicit that the Torah was given to people living on their land, right? Yeah. And this is even more explicit for Sfiras, for Chag HaShavuos. It very explicitly says in the beginning of the mitzvah of Sfiras Omer, of Karban Omer, Sfiras Omer, and Shavuos, in the book of Leviticus, chapter 20 something, it says, Kisavoy Aloretz, and then you will, right? It says you will make Elim Me'ad Hashem, and then in the beginning of Sfira, it doesn't say this is what you're going to do. It says Kisavoy Aloretz, Ksartim Katzira Vavaisim Es Omer, and then it says you will count, and then it says, and on the 50th day you will bring Mishavei Seichem L'Taviyu Lechem Tenufa. You will bring what we call Shtei Alechem, and that's what we call Chag HaShavuos, right? Very, very clear, right? Very simple story. And the story is as simple as can be, that if you know a little bit about the order of the harvest, which I don't know, I just know it from the story in the Torah, but I'm assuming that this is true also if you look around in the fields, which at least in Israel, like in the way, mostly the way it's, the way the agriculture works, there are grain cereals that start growing, that they harvest, their time of being ripe and harvest is earlier, and there are things that are later, right? In general, it goes like this. I'll tell you a very interesting understanding over here. Okay, everyone knows, and if you listen to my shir on Bruchas and Tefillah and the Rambam recently, you'll learn about this. Everyone knows that we live in a very weird situation. Why do we live in a weird situation? Because most of us go to work every day in the morning, and at the end of the week or the end of the bi-weekly period, get some kind of paycheck. Nobody knows how exactly our work made that paycheck. Something Marx called the alienation of labor. Right? You know how your paycheck comes from your work? Nobody knows. Somehow, when he says that you don't know how your labor produces the value that you get out of it, right? There's a system that somehow claims that if you fill out a lot of forms, you press a lot of times next on the internet during the week, somehow at the end of the week you get a paycheck, and therefore you're able to pay rent, and therefore you're able to continue your life. But there's very little cycles of production, like where you see, like I did work, and then I receive, like I get my reward, right? It grows.
Sounds a little bit more.
Right, so people that own businesses or people that are capitalists, they do zriya and ktsira. Right? If you're a capitalist, then you're closer. It's very weirdly, workers are the furthest from the ancient system. The capitalists and the owners are closer to it.
That's
The?
same thing. They just that
Who?
paycheck. What's it called? Gemara calls them I don't know.
Others, like someone who gets percentage of the field, like a sharecropper.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's still a sad situation, but yeah. Yeah, but I'm saying nowadays when you're a worker, you just work you just work for a day and you get your payment. It's not very well connected to like natural cycles of there's like business cycles or there's like cycles of production. You don't really know about that. You just live in your slavery.
If it would be tied to production, you would get more or less.
Maybe, or maybe it's smoothed out, but there's no. Okay. But and that's why we're living in a very weird world. But the Torah assumes, and like I was saying, a modern like capitalist or someone like invests and waits for the business to give titles, right, to bear fruit, or someone who different kind of entrepreneurship, or there are different ways you could come close to this. And this is the basic cycle of a farmer in the ancient times, and until not so long ago, about 80% of humanity were farmers, or like auxiliaries to farmers. And right, you read the Torah, there's only two jobs that are mentioned: farmers and warriors. That's basically what you do. And like in the winter you farm, and in the summer you fight. That's the more or less this Seder HaOlam.
Hunters.
What?
Hunters.
Hunters mostly, not much. Only Isa was a hunter. Well, Yaakov was a farmer, a father, a pastor.
There's one story about builders.
What, like Parshas Noach?
Yeah.
Yeah, those are bad people.
Right.
The builders.
That's exactly the story.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go back to Shavuos. We're going to get involved in this. The point is, there is a natural cycle, and therefore, for example, and people get very confused. Like there's a bracha in Shemon Esrei about for money, for parnasa, right? Called Baruch Aleinu or Brachenu, depending on what nusach you daven, and if it's in the summer or the winter. And that's a bracha for something called Hashana Hazois, the year. What is the year? Nobody knows why we're blessing the year. But the year over here means the crop of the year. It doesn't mean literally the year, or maybe the opposite. The word Shana probably originally meant the crop of a year, or a cycle of crop, and then was borrowed to mean also like just a period of time, which we count more or less by the seasons, which are what gives us the crop cycle. And therefore, the Baruch HaPanasa is that this year's crop should work out. That's why in the winter we pray for rain, and in the summer we sort of just pray for the protection of it, which is called tal, but it just means that the already grown fruit or cereals or whatever you're growing shouldn't be ruined by too much heat or anything like that. That's what Moed Tal, that's what V'ruchan Tal means. If anyone didn't know yet, Pesach we have it Tfilas Tal, that's what it means. You could read it, all the poetry around it, and you see that it says explicitly that. So this is the natural cycle, right? Now, this means something like this, right? Since, at least in the kind of climate that we're thinking of, generally there are sort of these kind of two main periods, which we call summer and winter in general, in which, in something like in the beginning of the winter or sometime in the winter, you plant, and then you wait a few months and nothing happens. You wait for God to send rain. That's the part of God's part in this process. You don't do anything. You're sitting around and reading Tehillim or writing books or whatever it is that you're doing during the winter. Playing ball game, playing cards or whatever, and making Hanukkah left, whatever, all kinds of random stuff. And then, in the spring, things start to grow. Now, this means, for example, that the end of the winter is a very scary time, because after things start to grow, you have to figure out a way of storing your grain for the whole year, because otherwise in the winter you're really going to have anything to eat. This is why the end of the winter is this time of starving. That's when everyone starves. If you'll read any like ancient things, you'll see we don't have enough food to last through the winter, and the winter ends, we start rationing our food.
Trail of Oregon.
There's American stories about this, but all kinds of stories that, not like I said, not so long ago, people lived like this.
The donor part.
Now this means that when it comes like Chodesh Adar, that Purim is a big interesting thing that we have a Yom Tov in that time. But when it comes like Adar, but the end of the, February, March, people are kind of like really, really tense, and they might not survive, because if the harvest comes too late, you're going to be dead. And then finally comes Chodesh Aviv. Aviv literally means and what does Aviv mean? Literal translation. No, Aviv means the barley harvest. Sa'ira Aviv, says the pasuk in Parshas this. Aviv literally means the barley harvest, because this is the first cereal that is harvested, that becomes ready, becomes ripe. And finally, we're sort of happy that we survived. We have some barley, and we could eat a little bit. This is why we have Pesach, or not exactly Pesach, at least the second day Pesach. Karban Omer, Ksavei Pesach is we have the independence, but there's a second like interpretation of Pesach, maybe the second half of Pesach. There's all kind of random theories about explaining the connection with this and Pesach, but Chodesh, the Karban Omer means we're happy that we survived this year. Now seems like we're gonna last for another few weeks. We have food. Now, unfortunately, barley is not a very good grain. Usually we call it and Chazal Machal Ba'ema. Animals like to eat it. Okay, you can give it to your animals. You'll eat that, and you'll kill the animals and eat them. You could survive on it. You could make bread out of it or something. It doesn't make very good bread. Did you ever eat bread from barley?
That's right. But it's not bad. It's not very.
It's not very good, and it also doesn't rise very well. At least in the ancient times, I've read, or that's what my friend told me today. I'm trusting him for now. That nowadays maybe you could put artificial yeast, but in the ways that bread rose and became chametz, it's very hard to make barley into chametz, because naturally it doesn't ferment. It doesn't have the gluten content or whatever it is to make it into chametz. So barley is usually eaten. If people eat it, they eat it like it says in the Torah by the story of the Omer, koliv va'esh, geres carmel, with all kinds of random, like you make cereals, like you make some farina out of it, or you bake it, you make some kind of klois, vagoizim, all kind of like things. It's kind of a poor man's food, but at least he survived. That's called Karban Omer, and of course we bring the first one to the Beis Hamikdash to show our appreciation for the beginning of the harvest. And that also, if you think about it, actually matches very well with the historical meaning of Pesach, which is that we survived, right? We got out of Egypt, we survived, we're here. We have some man to eat, we don't have much to eat, we have some matzah, which is, matzah you're yotze from barley for sure, right? Sort of matzah, or all barley is matzah, or matzah is made out of barley, and you're fine, okay. Chodesh, that's the big thing of Chodesh, like there's the new thing, right? You read the story of Shemitah and Parshas Bahai, you see it's like, if there's a great, great abundance, you still have old grain from last year. Usually, it uses up at the end of the year, at the end of the cycle. Now, you go to the Beis Mikdash and make a big party, you bring some Karban Omer, and so on, and now you go back to work. So, this is one of the most stressful times of the year in this kind of system. You go back to work, and it's getting hot, and you got to go in the field and harvest all the things that grow. And within these 7 weeks, more or less, slowly, another few weeks, if you ever spoke with farmers, or you go like in a kibbutz in Israel, where they have all kind of random plants and stuff, every few weeks, during the summer, basically from Pesach until sort of like Chamashas Ba'av, every 2 weeks something else gets ripe. It's like literally a schedule, more or less. And you're basically at work, and when you harvest, you have to go to work from the morning, from Basik, and you wake up before the sun, and because there's not a lot of time, and you can't work at night. So you have to fill up all your time working. That is what people do for 7 weeks. That's why there's a pasuk that says in Yirmiyah that Hashem is nois nasayoda beito. He gives rain in time, and then Shavuos chukos kotze yishmalanu. He watches for us the weeks of the kotze. Those are the times that need to be watched. You need to make sure if there's a random rain or a random cold flash or something, everything gets ruined, and then you're dead for that year. So you got to make sure that you have your good harvest, and you're working on that. That's like the time, like someone that has nowadays, like I said, we don't really live like this, but someone who sort of has some investment, and then this is like the time where it vests, right? He gets his proceeds, and you have to make sure right away to put it away, to take it out of the company's account because next week they might go back down, and you don't trust them. You put it in somewhere safer, and that's basically what people do during the harvest. That's the harvest. Now, since when you go a little further into the time, and like in the time of Shavuos, we get the wheat, chita, and wheat obviously could be made into chametz and could be made into much better things than the barley, and that's why we're very happy about this, and we do something called shtei lechem, and we make it into chametz. That's called, we're not just surviving, we're also thriving. Stimmt? That's the difference. So, Pesach, Omer. Exactly, from matzah to chometz. That's little push it pshat, it says in Zohar, al pikabol, lechem anashmayim, lechem noretz, but it's push it pshat, from Reb Devir letter, it's push it pshat, and it's 100% true. From we're going for surviving to thriving, which is the same thing as going from Metzias Mitzrayim to Torah. Now you think about it a little, and I'll explain you how this connects to what this means, what this has to do with Torah. Okay? Now what does it have to do with Torah? So he says like this, I had a different pshat once, but more like Litvish pshat, and this is more Chassidish, so I'm going to say it. Today I'm saying Dvi's pshat. If you want my pshat, you could look in some old Ayid, you don't know him. You should know him, but it's hard, it's complicated. He lives in Israel, you know. Devir Lehrer, look it up on Facebook.
What?
Devir Lehrer. Lehrer, Melamed, Lehrer, a teacher from Germany, is called a Lehrer. Anyways, so, what did I want to say? Not a leather. A letterer. Oh, letterer. No, that's with a D. Okay. So now we have to understand what has got to do anything with the Torah. Okay? Seems to be very gashmiistic, like the Mashgiach would say. So now, besides for Gashmis being nothing wrong with Gashmis, what? Yeah. And then like we spoke last week. Malachim don't have. Yeah. Besides for the not being nothing wrong with Gashmis, that's what you should be happy for. There is also a more basic pshat with Torah that has to do with this. And this is also very clear if you read Parshas Emor and Parshas Re'eh in a slightly different way. You'll see that the Torah is what creates even more abundance and more happiness in this kind of time of harvest where you finally, you finally fulfill your options and you get the money from the work that you did all year, since last year. And God helping you with His rain during the winter. And that is like this. So my Litvish pshat was that the Torah says that if the basic deal of the Torah is called a bris, and the Torah says that if you won't do the Torah, you won't have food for your animals. So of course, if you have food, that means you did the Torah. And that's what the meaning of the word Torah, basically, in the Chumash at least for the most part, means this. That was my old Litvish pshat. Now I'm going to give you a better pshat because that's like very din. I'm going to give you, although it's true, and we can get into a lot of Torahs about that, but I'm going to give you a better pshat from Reb Devir. And he said like this. The words that say in the Torah by Shavuos, it says like this. After it says the mitzvah of Shavuos, it says, "V'kitzrechem as kitzir artzechem lo yisachale pa'asad chaliktzoi v'leket kitzircha lo yisalakit la'oniv laget ha'azevois mani Hashem lekechem." Right? So randomly, and this pasuk more or less is repeated from Parashas Kedoshim, or is repeated. Was repeated. Said already in Parashas Kedoshim. Right? So randomly in the middle of Hilchas Shavuos, we get Hilchas leket shekopeh. Right? Obviously, if you read the story of Rus and Shavuos, you'll know that it's also the same story of that. Right? And what does it got to do with everything? You understood why it's got to do, because that's the time that we do it. But it's still kind of out of place. And the teretz is that Shavuos is this celebration of this period where we finally received our reward. Right? The time of schar. Like you work and you get reward. You work all winter and you get your reward. Things grow in the spring and the summer. Now, Now, it's very important to realize that there are better and worse ways of organizing your economy. The worst ways make everyone have less money, and the better ways make everyone have more money. What are those better and worse ways called?
Capitalism, socialism.
Okay. No, we explained that this is all only works for capitalists, because it's kind of capitalist. Right? People that invest, and could you make the air conditioning higher if you could? Stronger, like put it down. There's a remote over there. So, as capitalism.
Cold.
Make it colder, if you don't mind, unless you're too cold. Just to put down 2 degrees. So, that is like this. There are better and worse ways of creating a society and having money. And of course, the whole point of the Torah is to have the better way. That's what Torah is. And it's very important because we have this crazy way of reading the Torah as a list of obligations. And that's nonsense. Nobody would make a Yom Tov for a list of obligations. The point of a Torah is...
People do it nowadays. I don't think
People do it. No, they lie to themselves that they do it. You can come to the Shia last year. Well, they don't do it. People say a lot of this. But what the Torah is, no, what I mean to say is like this. When we use, for example, we read there's different parshas that we read, right? Everyone reads every week the parsha of the week, whether you hear it in shul or you read it yourself or you hear some Torah about it. And everyone that does that follows the cycle knows that there are parshas that are more geschmack, that people are more happy about, there are parshas that people are less happy about, right? They're like a story of Shavuot, everyone is kind of happy, there's a lot of drushes to say, or some parsha of like, there's parshas of Chatum that other people like Shlach, Korah, Chukas, people that love those parshas. Everyone has their stories that they like, right? Adam Rishon, the Noach, all these nice stories that the kids like, and the teachers to make them pictures and so on. Then we read like Parshas Kedoshim, or Parshas Kisaitzai, or whatever parsha, just a bunch of list of laws, and some of them are happy because they could say a shir, and that's nothing to do with the parsha, it's like a halacha that's mentioned in it. It is the parsha, technically. But most other people are kind of bored and like waiting for it to finish, right? True story.
You have a Kasiga with nobody.
I think it's the lowest in even Koski's ratings. I think it's,
Right? He gives ratings?
he rates them. He rates the songs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fearless.
He's a huge fan of ratings.
Okay, we're not allowed to rate. Okay, but I'm saying this is a fact, right?
You have the ones like Kasiga, right?
Everyone rates stuff, and wait. So I'm not going to give ratings now. What we're going to do is give you
Separate you too short. You drag them into the columns.
different. Yeah. No. What I'm saying is that this is one of the reasons why we're very weak. Like, what do you do? What is your like attitude? What kind of story is read like Parshas Kedoshim? Take a parsha like a self-contained, how do they call it, a code of law, right? More or less tells you everything about how to be a yid. Like a little bit of Yeridai, a little bit of Chesh Mishpat, a little bit of Erchan, a little bit of Venezeh, a little bit of everything, right? Or in the book of Dvarim, from Rei until Kisavai, more or less, right? There's all these like self-contained little versions of the Torah, Parshas Mishpatim, Parshas Beshalach even, and so on. So, in Kisisa, I'm sorry, right? There's all these little things, and people just, you read it. Now, who does read it? How do we think it should be read? Like I said, if someone is like a halacha guy, if you're like, okay, or in general, you're like Orthodox Jew, and Orthodox means something like, I think that the Torah is a list of obligations. So, you're like, wait, this is something you have to do. Do we have to do it like this? Do we have to do it like that? We could have discussions. Does it really mean this? Do we have to do Shemitah this way? Do we have to do Heter Mechira? Do we not have to do? That's really how we read it, right? And if you read it that way, then, okay, if you're like a halacha guy, you're going to have some use out of it, because that's how you make your money, but not exciting. Nobody is happy with it, right? Nothing exciting, right? Like I was by Shira, was Litvak, and he said, wow, those Matan Torah, and everyone likes Parshas Yisro, because like we're told that Matan Torah is a great thing, although it's just a list of laws also. But there's at least these like nice stories of the thunder and lightning, Koiles of Rokem and Shofar, and like dramatic. And then, like, okay, and what is the Torah? If you buy Eved Ivri, then Yetze B'Shanim, B'Shmitta V'Yovel, and Eved Kanani is Yetze B'Shem V'Ayin. Hello, that's not why we have Shavuos for. We ate cheesecake, so we should know the difference between Eved Ivri and Eved Kanani. Doesn't make sense. And everyone's like, yeah, that's how we know. The kid said, you learn Ktois, that's the message. What? This? Yeah. But that's nonsense. Now I discovered.
No, what do they say? Besides going like this, what do you mean by that? Like, what do they say?
That's what they say.
What? The cheesecake tells you Dama Vria?
Yeah. Yeah. There's that. Hagufa, exactly. Hagufa means I don't know what parrots, I'll just say that. So, that and if you don't know, the truth is these are people, usually some of them that have a chiyas in learning toys. That's why they do it, right? They must have some pleasure out of it. And they identify that pleasure with God, which is cool. Now,
no, I think you mean cool in a real way.
yeah, I mean, not mechelek. There was big. Okay, this is not our conversation. We're just making fun of Eden now. My point is that I have a better way of reading it. Okay, and I think that we have to read Parshas Kedoshim, all these parshas, like each one of them is like a self-contained thing. I think, and you have to read them as descriptions of utopias. That's basically what they are. What they are is And they're all imaginary. Nobody that read the Parshas Habahad and talked about how we're going to sell our houses and we're going to have all these complicated rules for when you could be good, your real estate. This never really worked. Okay, if it worked, it was like 10,000 Chosh Mishpat saying bought and bought and bought, but it's not very useful. And that's not the point of reading the Chumash. Like for that, you could look at Chosh Mishpat, you could look in the Mishnah, which gives you the rundown of the laws.
I had a class with you on these topics.
So.
You tried to do Shavuos stuff or something.
Right. So what I think is, but I'm trying to give you a Chumash pshat. The pshat of the Chumash, like I said, everything, you were not at the beginning of the share. I said the Chumash always makes sense. It's the halacha that sometimes we don't understand the time, but the Chumash always makes sense. So, if you read it, you have to read it as a utopia. Something like, imagine, and this is like Moshe Rabbeinu or whoever, Hashem himself giving us these like lists of laws, and he's saying like this: we're going to create the best society, the best organization of people. Now, of course, organization of people needs some lists of rules, not too many, but some rules, some kind of laws that they're going to live by. Now, there's a lot of areas. There's issues, how do you treat your wife? What happens if someone rapes a basula eshes, and what if she's not eshes, and what if you go to war, and what if you give tzedakah? How much tzedakah do you give, and so on? What if you might give a pekudin to your friend? So, and this yid, like the Navi, was making this list. He was sitting down and thinking. Imagine like me, right? I'm going to make a yeshiva, right? Now every yeshiva has like takanas yeshiva, right? But of course, the takanas of the yeshiva that I know are a bunch of nonsense. They're all there to serve the mashgiach, not to serve anyone else, right? They're not about serving God. No, they're not even mechilik with it. They're moeder, right? There's a system, it has to work. We're serving this system, right? But let's say I was a tzaddik and I would go to Mount Sinai and I would go to Hashem and I would say, let's imagine together a kind of system, a list of rules that will not serve the people or whoever is on top, like make sure that why is there a seder in yeshiva? Why is there a certain time when you have to be there? Otherwise, it would be very hard for Magen to teach everyone specifically. That's really what he would have to do, because that's his mitzvah to teach Torah to the kids. But since he's lazy, he wants to do it only once. He says everyone has to be by the time on the sheet. So the Zman HaShir, the Shmir Zmanim is there to serve him. Nothing wrong, but it's not here.
But Friday push didn't have Zmanim.
Yeah, you come. In the olden days, it wasn't Zmanim. You look in the Gemara, how they describe it. You come in the morning, you ask the Shaila. There was some kind of structure, but I'm not saying we shouldn't have structure. I'm just giving you an example of you could very obviously see that we all live within certain structure. Like Moshe Rabbeinu was living in Mitzrayim, right? In Mitzrayim, they're full of laws, and they didn't live without laws. Not like we imagine, came to Torah and gave laws. Everyone has laws, right? Problem is, these are not divine laws, right? These are laws that serve power. They serve whoever is the one that makes them. He makes sure everyone's on time, because otherwise it's hard for him. They make sure that there's a whole law that you have to count your harvest, so you should be able to tax it, all kinds of laws like that. So, right? Many great laws that we have, right? If you deposit more than $10,000, you have to report it, so the government should be able to track you if you bought drugs. Okay, that's a law, but not helping me at all, right? Not helping God. Maybe it is, but probably not. But, so now Moshe Rabbeinu came and he said, let's imagine how do we organize? We have to do a lot of things. We have to make a king maybe, or not a king, or a kohen, or whatever. But also we have to make laws. So let's imagine the list of laws that are going to be the best. They're utopian. All the laws of the Torah are utopian. Almost all of them. They're not extremely utopian because they're referring to the plans that people have, like we discussed in the last year. But they're utopian in the sense that if you look at them as a unit, as all together, they're describing some kind of ideal situation, and they're solving all the problems. Of course, in reality, you never solve all the problems, because whenever you make a law to this direction, there's a problem from the other direction, and you need a living bezdin to solve these kind of contradictions. Every law has an opposite law, right? You shouldn't give tzedakah, but not too much, right? Like we talk about the chametz and so on. But ideally, if you read Parshas Kedoshim or Parshas Emor or Ulu's Parshas, they're all about creating this fully perfect laws.
Doesn't it go against the Rambam says that the Muslim laws are compromised of some sort?
Yeah, that's the opposite position than a kid that I talked about last week. Now I'm just trying to tell you what is but what is the point of this law? It's not that this you have to do. You have to do it maybe, but that the point of this giving these stories and telling you is something like, and like Aseret HaDibros are a version of this, right? We had a lot of shirim of just trying to explain what Aseret HaDibros were. But what explanation would be something like, let's think of the most basic things that in our ideal world, this is what everyone will follow. Very simple. They're going to believe in one God, and they're not going to swear in His name falsely, which is the main use of believing in one God, by the way. And they're going to respect their parents and keep Shabbos and not steal or lie, specifically in court. We had a shir about what that means. And they will not take other people's things. They'll respect property, and not their women, not their property, not their honesty, and so on. That's the story. That's a beautiful story. You wanna make it real. You're gonna figure out a lot more things than just this list of 10 laws. But it's a very beautiful story. What it's describing is like a vision of how everything could work. Of this like most beautiful society. And if you would say, oh, I need some more details, they say, you know what? Let me tell you. There's this thing called slavery. I think it would be really nice if we have like a special law of that slavery has to have a time limit. Oh, but wait, but we're being very perfect here, right? Sometimes the slave, it's for the good of the slave to stay there. Okay, so we'll have some special institution called Even Nirza that will solve that problem. And so on and so forth.
Are you saying like it incorporates like all of reality essentially instead of just thinking of one specific person?
I'm not saying, but I'm saying, my thing just one point. That instead of reading it as like a whole list of things that have to be done, you read it as a description of a utopia. Imagine you would write down, you have better laws, something, make your own laws, no problem. What?
Like a current state utopia with
yeah, utopia, a realistic utopia. It's not a not realistic utopia. We're like, we're going to have no private property and we'll share our women like the Republic. No, it's a very realistic utopia based on the solving all the problems that I could think of that I could see have now. But it's not there to give you, this is what you have to do. And how do I know that this is not what the Torah is doing? Because it always promises something called reward and punishment. What is reward and punishment? Everyone knows, Ikra Torah is Chai V'Einish. Reward and punishment means, look, now you're in punishment. You're in Mitzrayim. Why you're in Mitzrayim? Because Mitzrayim has bad laws. They serve the king and everyone else should suffer. That's called being in Mitzrayim. We're going to have a Torah for free men. And we're going to have an organization of society that's worthy of free men. And that's the reward. It literally says the reward is you'll be free, right? Read Parshas V'Chikoyse, that's what it says. Or you have laws that in Mitzrayim that are, you read Parshas Vayigash, you see the laws of Mitzrayim, all the agriculture of Mitzrayim is organized so that the king should have his 20% tax. That's basically why they plant over there. And what do they do with the 20% tax? God knows what. And we're going to have a different laws. We're going to have also taxes, but they're going to be for your benefit, and they're going to be for all the poor people, so they're also planned. Very different than Mitzrayim, that all the money goes to the rich get richer. Right? We're going to have this whole system of taxes, which is going to end up supporting the Kehanim, which teach people to be good people, and supporting the poor people, like it says in Sefer Devarim more explicitly. Right? We're going to have this whole law of harvest, and we're back to where we are. We're going to have this whole law that when you harvest, you make sure that you're not the only one that enjoys the harvest. All the poor people, the Gerius and the Peah, the Shekha, we have all kinds of random tricks of making sure that when you harvest, it's not just you and the 5 people on top that make all of the money, that get all the products. It's going to be also for the poor people. That is what the Torah is. Good story, no? And for such a Torah, you should make a holiday. No, not pashut. And you should call it Matan Torah Seinu. By Matan Torah Seinu, we're not saying something different than Chag HaKotzer. We're just saying that we have a better one because we have a Torah. This is what the Torah was about.
You think it's definitely certain agricultural sections of the Torah? Or it's...
What do you mean, Dafka agricultural?
I mean, like, Parshas Kedoshim is not necessarily agricultural.
Yeah, but like I said, in the agricultural society, which is the whole world until like 250 years ago, the main the main economy is that. Like being successful means, and still means that in some sense. But we're in a lot of abstractions, but basically means that.
So maybe you could say, right, Shevet Levi didn't have any land, and Levi's a place.
Well, Levi also, that's why we have all these psukim in Bamidbar, in the Vorim, Levi Shebeshirech Aletas Venu, which are took all by the Me'adim. That's why we have to go on the Me'adim to Eretz Yisrael, to Yerushalayim, to give the Leviim, that they should also have a Yom Tov. Otherwise they wouldn't have.
No, but
Levi's Shevet
Levi's Torah, as you do with the Rambam.
Yeah, but it's not Torah doesn't, is not, even the Rambam Shevet Levi is, when he has a Yom Tov, doesn't need Yom Tovim because he's always learning. But his Yom Tovim are still, in the literal sense, like I said, we were saying the push the pshat because everyone is trying to say complicated things nobody understands. The Shevet Levi also enjoys the harvest. That's what it says explicitly in the psukim of Shavuos and of Valevi Shebeshirech. The Levi is also enjoying the harvest. Of course, he uses it. Everyone is going to use it. The point is not just to live and have money. The point is to do things with that, with your life. Nobody disagrees with that. And then like the general, there's like people like Levi or whoever you want to call it that do more of that. That's not a problem. But it's still, the Chag is still the Chag HaKotzir, and it's the Chag of this ideal idea that when you live in the Torah life, then you have a better Kotzir, and you have more money, and you're more happy, and your wife is more happy, and your children are more happy, the poor people are more happy, they're less poor, or they're at least provided for, and that is why it's Matan Torah. I think that's the best pshat. It's a very good pshat.
So what do we celebrate?
that we got a lot of money. Unfortunately, nowadays we're not Mekayim the Torah, and we don't have more money. So we should not celebrate, we should cry instead. That's what they do in yeshiva. But they don't realize.
That's why I have to learn all that.
What is the
Actually, they
actual?
had 3 days non-stop learning.
What is the actual celebration? I'm celebrating what? This
My meaning is
This
they don't learn
idea
the whole
of-
for the Siva, the fresh taste of Torah right now.
of that ideas were given of how to make.
Not we're given that we're living it. We only do the holiday is living it. The Yom Tov is living it. It's not talking about
Wait a
it.
minute.
Talking is worthless.
So we're celebrating the day.
After, like it says in the Torah, Kisa Vayla, it's when you will come
This
to
is a
the
constant living. So why
When
that
you-
day? This is a
Again,
constant living.
this is the time. There's only one time of the year, or 1 week. It's not a day. It's Shavuos. It's the weeks. It's that period. You can't dance around whatever you do. That's called celebrating a holiday. You do it 1 day, but it's Chag HaShavuos. It's not 1 day. It's the period, right? And this is the time where you actually pocket the money that you worked on all year. And how did it work the money with the Torah? Because without the Torah, it wouldn't work. Yeah, it's Chag HaKotze. Not specifically the day.
Then you don't have to say the second part. Well, it's better not to do Torah Shemayim. It's obvious.
And what is obvious? I have a whole different dish for the second part. For that, that's not what's obvious is obvious.
It's Torah Shemayim. It's like you missed the whole boat. The whole boat is that we're making
Yeah.
the society, not the.
Who is making it is different. Is different thing. Wait, yeah.
That's what I would say.
Okay, so you already know. You can.
You go? Okay.
You shouldn't go home.
One time I already know. I can't go home.
I had a lot of other
I already
theories.
know.
I had a lot of other theories to say about that. But this is a very good pshat. No, but I have to finish this because it doesn't actually work. In other words, we're not there. Not entirely there. At least maybe to some extent we are. We could. With this last year, there was a post Shavuos drasha to explain in which sense we do have a Torah, and we should be happy. But in many senses, we're not. And obviously, how do I know that we're not? I mean, already in the times of the Torah, it was not. That's why it says that Yom Tovim are kind of fake if you're not Mekayim the Torah. And there's all kind of prophets that say this and say that nobody needs your Yom Tov. It's not just about having a lot of cheesecake. It's about this a system that is supposed to work and make you more happy, make everyone more happy. And that's what's called a Torah. Unfortunately, at least if you believe that there's something called Golas, which Torah itself talks about, right? And it says very clearly that it's because you don't follow the Torah. In other words, it's going to destroy you. In that sense, we don't have Shavuos. We don't have any Yom Tovim.
It's bad for you.
Like
to
Arva
do
called
right?
Simcha.
Is it bad or is it just?
No, just then you come up with all kinds of Torahs. You start talking about obligation, and you start talking about being up all night. You're talking about all kind of random things because you don't have the basic thing. And you don't even have the language. Then you come on Tisha and you're like, why do we cry? We seem to be doing great. Okay, no problem. We also didn't know what Shavuos is, so nothing is working. That's a real problem. I could even tell you a drusha about this problem if you want. Not a drusha, something very important. Also, I'll explain you something that seems like just a random mystical sgula in a very simple, serious way. It says in Talmud Bavli that Ezra HaSofer was metachmet hakuna that we should read brachas haklilas before Shavuos. Remember? That's why we read b'chakosa usually in our order. I don't know if that's what Ezra meant, but in our order usually b'chakosa is one week before Shavuos. Right? And the Gemara, like the Bavli, doesn't really understand this. It says like, Tech lashana v'kileisa. Okay, what does that mean? Like a simon? Like we should talk about kilos at the end of the year. So like, do you know what that means? What does Tech lashana v'kileisa mean?
I mean, yeah, that was like New Year's. So you're done. We're past.
So it's a remes, like a you should be sad on Erev Shana, so the next year you should be happy. Like, what?
No, it should
What does this
be
mean?
happy. It's getting rid of all the years.
That's what we need Ezra for. Like Ezra, the one who basically created the reinvention of the Torah, and for that we still have in some sense. For need him to tell us like a nice gula that we should read the klolas of the Torah before Rosh Hashanah, and also before Atzeres, because Shavuos is up to beginning Rosh Hashanah, because it says Atzeres al Peres El. And very nice, right? A nice random gula. It's like worth a berg as much as eating apple and honey on Rosh
Ezra
Hashanah.
was mistaken, the b'chakosa thing?
Also steht in Mesechtes Megillah. Ezra tikkun lam leYisrael shekoyren klolas shebeteres kanem lefnei Atzeres v'sheb Mishnah Torah koydem Rosh Hashanah. Katuv beGemara.
That is it in Yerushalayim.
Good question. People have asked this question, noticed this question before you. But that's what it says in the Gemara. That's what it says. It probably doesn't mean this. Our order happens to work out that we do this. It doesn't perfectly work out. but probably Ezra. They just did a kriya. They read it. Nothing to do with Seder Shavuot or whatever. I don't know if Ezra had this specialist. Ezra did it even that Seder. They did their own thing. That's Bashab Pshat. But what is going on? Does everyone know what's going on? This is one of these things like you read and everyone talks about it. And it's like random. Nobody knows what it means. It's a good poetry, but like use seriously. Doesn't mean anything. Okay. So I'm going to tell you what it means. Which pshat?
That's what it means to say it.
Yeah, it's a nice rhyme. It's like, you should eat apple and honey on Rosh Hashanah, so you should have a good year. Did anyone ever test out that if you eat more apple and honey on Rosh Hashanah, you have a better year? Yeah, it's cute. I'm not saying, what?
Works for me.
It works? Yeah, it works. I'm not saying it doesn't work, but it's like, nothing interesting. But I think that if you know the context, you'll see that it's very serious. Not very serious, also very simple. Okay? You remember Ezra. Who was Ezra? Ezra was the one who read Berachas HaKlelos, who read Parshas Bechakosai and Parshas Kisava, but maybe even more Bechakosai in some sense, and said, wow, this is the story that happened to us. Right? It's so obvious that some Apikoros said that Ezra must have written it. Right? Remember? What I'm just showing from that is that it's very obviously talking about him. Right? He was the one that from his work, from his project, his life project, you could see that this is what he internalized. He's living in this framework of the Berachas HaKlelos of the Torah. Right? Ezra came and said, Rabbi said, we're stuck in this, we're post-exile in some sense, but we basically didn't solve the problem of exile yet. We had this beautiful kingdom, right? Malchus Beis David. It ended. We got stuck in exile. And we're struggling to restart the thing, right? Not working very well. We had the Rebbe, we tried. Struggling. There's the Jerusalem is not very good, well protected because of these problems, right? And then what does he come and he says, well, we have a plan for this problem. What's the plan? My basic plan, Rabbi Isai. If you see people struggling, if nothing is working very well, it's because we don't do the Torah, not because he was a fundamentalist, or like that guy that says that he's going to have the economy of Mbechkos. Because he said, wait, we have to create a society. We're in exile because we don't know how to manage our society well. So we're going to learn how to manage it, and then we'll have a better life. That's what it says in Berachos HaKlelos of the Torah, right?
Results-based validation.
So Ezra came, and he told people this. He said, look, and he was the one that invented, I don't know if invented, but he was the one that did the first recorded Kriyas Torah in history. Came to Jerusalem in the 7th month in Rosh Hashanah. It says in the Pusik. And he read them the Torah. Which part of the Torah did he read them? Sefer Dvarim, Sefer Shemos. Certain parts he talks about, but we read them the basic idea that he taught them from the Torah, and he explained them. It says in the Torah that if you will deal fairly with your... It says, this is what Ezra said, okay? He wrote a book called Malachi where he explained himself very well. And he said, Malachi is Ezra, steht in the Gemara. Of course this was Ezra. If it wasn't Ezra, then it was his Gilgal. What's the difference? Same idea. He came and he said, it was his pen name. What do you mean? Malachi is a fake name. It's the most obvious pseudonym in the world. Malachi, my messenger. Okay, who? Malachi. So he said, and he said in the book, Hine Malachi Yavai. Thank you. So he said, look, you're not going to work out if all you're going to be doing is trying to integrate with the local elites, and you're going to not care about your own women and children. Every person who has Eshes Neurim, right? His wife that he married when he was young, and now she's not beautiful enough for him, and he's richer, and he goes and he hangs out with the Bnei Smoyav over there, like Machman and Killian did, like the story of Bnei Smoyav and Parshas Pinchas Matos, like the Torah says will happen, and then of course you will not be successful. Your society will lose its coherence and you'll fall apart. That was one of the things he said. And he said a bunch of other things in that vein, and he said, look, listen, we have a good system. He was very into the economic system, the Maasres, the Truma, and so on. He said, look, if you're going to be taking Maasres and not doing anything, not being the Kahanim, not doing the job of a Kohen, not teaching the people, not making them better, you're just a Ganav. You're not helping God, you're destroying him. He made all kinds of takudas, and he's tried to say, we have to follow the Torah, we have to do Shemitah, we have to do all these things in order that the system works. So he was the person whose life project was implementing the plan of Berachos HaKlelos. The plan of the Torah, that was his project. Ezra HaSefer. That was his life plan, and he explicitly didn't. This is not my Torah. He explicitly says this. Like explicitly told them this is what it says in the Torah, and tried to get them to follow the Torah, and then things will be better for you. Okay. And we explicitly know that he did this when on Rosh Hashanah. So I guess it says in the Gemara before Rosh Hashanah or on Rosh Hashanah, he read so that Tichle Shana Vekele Sera. Tichle Shana. Remember what does Shana mean?
Harvest cycle.
Thank you very much. Shana doesn't mean a year. Shana means a harvest cycle, right? So if your harvest didn't work out very, very well last year because you didn't do Meiser, like it says in the book of Malachi, you don't have Meiser, nothing works because everyone hates you and people steal your stuff, and you don't have a very good society. Therefore, what do you have to do? You have to start doing Meiser, and then the next year, after Sukkot, you're going to do planting again. The next year is going to work better, right? And the Gemara said, or imagined, and said that there's basically two times when we talk about this. One is Rosh Hashanah. So Ezra was the one that basically created the idea of Rosh Hashanah Zayim Adin. As we discussed, it doesn't say in the Torah. But Ezra very explicitly told everyone to do Tshuva on Rosh Hashanah. And that makes sense. But also, very obviously, on Shavuos. Because Shavuos is what it says in the Torah. You're going to come to the land, and you want things to work out well. So you're going to do the Kutzir. And you're going to give your poor people their stuff. Well, every single person here is on their phone. It's amazing. And besides from Moshe, and you're going to give the poor people their stuff, and you'll have a better year. You'll have a better year. So he taught the people this before the harvest, like before the year cycle starts, which is why Rosh Hashanah is the Yom Adin for the people. And after it started, or in the time that it's already starting to happen, and he showed them, did you have a good harvest this year? Well, if you did, it was because you did Torah. If you did to the extent that you didn't, it's because you didn't keep the Torah, so try to start this again. And when it says in the Gemara, you'll remember that it's also not random, right? Why it says Al Peres Ilan? What does this mean? You bring cheese and Shavuos because it says what's the point? Right? What is this all about? Mishnah, where did the Mishnah get this from? Made it up? Mishnah Masech Srashana. Barba Prokim Oilam Nidim. Pesach ala Tvua. Batzeres Al Peres Ilan. Rosh Hashanah Kol Oilam. Yeah? B'chag Nadan Al Amayim. What's this all about? Who told them all these things?
Because by the yearly cycle, right?
Exactly. It's as simple as can be, right? As we discussed, on Pesach is when the Tvua starts coming. So Pesach is when we see if the Tvua, which the cereals, right, the grains, barley, and then the wheat, and then other grains if you have, are coming. So on Pesach, that's the time when we see if the Peres Ilan worked out. All right, the Tvua, right? Then, if you ever went to a farm, you could see this even in Lakewood, you'll know that fruit trees, or tree fruits, right? Like all kinds of fruits, basically, grow later in the summer. Each one has their period. For example, the word kayetz, you know the word kayetz, right? Kayetz, people think means summer. Kayetz means fig harvest, right? What? Kayetz means cutting figs, specifically. Yes, read in the Torah, you'll see, always. Kayetz is something that has to do with ta'ena. And zomir means, esa zomir egia means cutting grapes and so on. What? Yes, we do. As in Venezuela and so on. We have words for this, because if you live in this world, it's obvious. There's specific words for it. And kayetz just means that it's the latest, I think it's one of the latest things. That's why we call it kayetz, like Tamazov. Before that we have, like, for example, like it says, right? Which time of the year was? The time when the grapes get ready, right? That's about Tammuz, more or less, a little bit after Shavuos. So, and in other words, Peres Ilan are the things that grow in the summer. You'll remember something very interesting that we discussed, that the further you get into the cycle, the more we're talking about luxuries, about thriving instead of surviving, right? From Pesach, when we go on Pesach, we have barley, we could survive, we could live on that somewhat. From, what?
It's better and better.
Yeah, it gets better and better. From Shavuos, we get bread, we can make chometz bread, it's geschmack bread, we can make lechem mishnah. You go a little further, you get wine, you could even drink some wine. Right? From just above, they went to the krumim. I think that's because the krumim are done then being harvested. So you could have a dance there. And so on. You get even like sweet fruits, all these kind of things. These are
I struggle to hear you harvesting apples in the fall.
That's the word weird. Who cares? The Torah doesn't work in America, I understand.
No, I'm saying maybe those.
I'm very immaculate every rest of this.
Yeah, it's later, but it's in the fall. It's like the latest. It's after everything.
It's late even everywhere.
Okay.
I have a big barbecue, there's no too much of that.
The barbecue,
with
the fruit platters, meat
with
platters.
But Kitzur HaMaaseh, that's why the summer is like a time of fun. Because the summer is when all the fun fruits grow. You don't just survive, you have wine, the Gamcha, the Rosh Hashanah, you get, by the way, olives even later sometimes, all the way into Hanukkah. So anyways, yeah, that's what we like Menorah and Hanukkah, you don't know?
Two bucks.
I didn't make up this pshat, this was Yel Benon's pshat about Hanukkah. Okay, the Kitzur HaMaaseh, that the olives get pressed in that time. Yeah. So, the Kitzur HaMaaseh, this is what Atzeres HaPeres Ilan means, you understand? So, and of course, Chag and Almayim, because it's before, right? Then after that is the period when it has to start raining and so on. So, Ezra gave this drasha on Rosh Hashanah, but also the same drasha he said on Shavuos. And why did he say it on Shavuos? Because remember, this is my main point, going back to his original point. Shavuos is about luxuries. Like it's like it says, like we have minhag to eat dvash v'chalav, right? Milchiks and sweet things, right? Because the point of the Torah is not just to survive, for that we have to time. The point of the Torah is to have fun. To eat chametz, exactly. Not survive, Hashem. No, we got to eat matz chametz, and we got to eat cheesecake. Nobody ever didn't survive because they didn't have cheesecake. Also, nobody ever didn't survive because they didn't have the whole Torah. Understand? You have Shev mitzvah noach, that's enough to survive at least. But if you want to have cheesecake, then you have to have Torah mitzvahs. That's the price. That's the mashal. Atzeres HaPeres Eilan. What? There?
The clickbait. When the clickbait.
What time is it?
From God.
10, 11?
Let's go.
It's another whole sheet.
Oh no.
No, you can't do that.
There's no campaign after
Clickbait.
this.
Why not? I can do whatever I want.
We're
Hello.
supposed to be having
On the
fun.
bus.
This sheet itself, by the way, was
Right now, we'll be by the bar.
matzah. This wasn't the chametz.
I can tell you, but it can be too quick for you to
That's the
understand.
It's the
basics.
same ones.
This is the basic. Okay, so the matzah is like this, the chametz is like this, but you're all falling asleep already. Make it even colder there, condition.
There's too much about
The way you
wheat.
get the harvest. Now you talk about harvesting. There's a limit to how much harvesting could be interesting, you know?
It's very interesting, rather. Okay, so like this. So like Rebbe said, everyone is confused because they all think that the Torah is something they have to do for some random reason. That people in Lakewood called Ratzon Hashem, which is a certain getchka called Ratzon Hashem. If you ever meet it, you should destroy it, like Avraham Avinu destroyed his father's idols. Ratzon Hashem is a pagan god.
It wasn't how you say it's optional when you get.
But I'm saying it. Wait, you want to have click victor, or you want to ask Kasha?
Oh no! If you want to get killed or stoned or whipped, then why would that be?
You don't get killed and stoned or whipped. That's part of the nice story that we have. Listen.
If you find it any cipher,
What?
you should just burn it.
No, the concept, not of course, Ratzon Hashem says the Berutza Buni. That doesn't mean that, right? Not Ratzon Hashem. Like
No,
the thing that Rav Tzimai worships. No, Kitzer.
No, when the Bible says at the end of the that you should do to do the roots Hashem.
No, the Baruch
He's talking
Shalom.
about
That's
the excuse
different.
that people
That's
make.
Okay.
not as the will of God.
Okay, the boys. I'm talking about something very simple. You want me to say click it, or you want me to? You want to actually understand? You want to actually understand? You can be here until next week.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand first what
So
you mean by
listen.
roots Hashem.
The Ratzon Hashem. What I mean is that people in this town think that in the neighboring town, in the small neighboring town next to Howell, people think that the reason why we do the mitzvah is because of something called Ratzon Hashem. Okay? That's not the reason. The reason why we do mitzvahs is because it's more fun. That's what it says in the Torah. If you'll do the mitzvahs, you'll have more fun.
So, and when the Maggid Mishnah uses it,
Ich weiß nicht, die mit sources, I can't live
I'm
like
trying to do
this.
source. I'm trying to say when a Chacham talks about it, what does he mean?
Chacham mean everything, Chacham mean, that's not the point. Chacham say all the same things, they mean other things. That's always the truth.
Okay.
You understand exactly what I'm talking about. So, now, Rabbi said, no, I have to say this, and this is a big problem. It's a very big problem. You want to know what's the problem. But I have another more things I have to say about this, but we'll get to it another time. This is the big problem. You understand? What is it a problem? Why is it a problem? The simple problem is like you could see on certain places, and we discussed a little before Pesach, that then when anyone realizes, so I'll tell you the problem. Okay, I'll tell you my clickbait drusha. It starts like this, but it's another whole drusha. You could start the video if you want, but it's gonna take too long. So don't do it. No, don't do it. What? Don't do it. No, everything is with a drusha. Without a drusha, it doesn't work. So this thing is like this. I want to tell you a story. It's 9, it's now, no, leave it over here. 10:15, I'll tell you a story. Stories like this. I was going on YouTube one day, as one does, and I met a guy I meet him like I saw the guy's channel, saying that he is the promised something. The second, he's both the second coming of, not the second, the first Christ coming, the Pope himself. He said that the Pope died and nobody, he claimed the Popehood before anyone else did, so he's the true Pope. And also, he said that he is also the true Mahdi that was promised for the Muslims, or at least Shia Muslims believe in this like hidden Mashiach, and he is the one. And he has a raya because there's a Messiah that Muhammad said in his will that someone will come. He made up this one said also, doesn't matter, but someone will come. He didn't make it up, he made a gematria that makes such thing, whatever. Someone Abdullah, and he's Abdullah. Man, heißt das, can't be someone else. Obvious, and Ferish, and the Torah. Exactly. And it's him. And he has another four rayas from the rayas basically like this. That it said that there was going to be 12 people and 3 people on this one, and all the simunim are 100% accurate. And he is the one, and he is the only one calling to worship God. Everyone else is worshiping himself. He is only one, and therefore he's the true messenger. And then he just repeats a whole bunch of verses of the Quran. If you will, and says it on himself, if you will believe, follow me, you will go to eternal life. If you will not follow me, you will go to hell forever and ever. And he calls all the people of the world to follow him, and he has a whole bunch of followers who swear to him, and he has a whole YouTube channel just of people saying shahadas to him, like I believe in God and his messenger Abdullah, blah blah blah. I will live and die on this. And he got into trouble in England recently, so he's in the news a little. Gets it. No. So now listen. So now I'm looking into the seed, and I'm not telling if you want to understand Lushnari, you could look on YouTube or wherever, but I want to give you theology. And he has a lot of Hasidim, and they're very good at social media and dark, like we said. If you want to be a Rebbe nowadays, that's what you have to do. So, what? A lot more. And and they explain that Rabbi Yisai, basically the thing, how does this work? So all the religious people, the Chachtan, the Chomim, the Ulama, the Chachmaya, Islam, and he also thinks as the Christians, all the Chach, they all laugh at him, like, Shiga, the guy of Stareim is the Pusik doesn't say that, it doesn't mean that. And he's like, you are a bunch of hypocrites. I'm saying exactly what Muhammad said when he came. What did he come? He didn't say Drushis. Did you read the Quran? Does it say Tifa Torah, but what it really means, Apusik? Very simple. I'm a messenger, Gabriel spoke to me, he said, go and speak this and this, and that's what I did. I say the same exact thing. I'm a messenger, God, and then Muhammad said the same thing. I'm the one prophesying the Torah that I will come, I'm the one that Jesus said will come. All you are believing false versions of that, but I tell the correct version, and people believe them, right? You are Bandapik that happen to have been born Muslims or Christians, and therefore you have nice Torahs. But the basic imani you don't have, right? If someone comes and says the exact thing that your prophet that you claim to have believed in said, you're like, the guy's either a Bashigana or a Rusha. Like, at least you should, something, maybe I'm the wrong one. Did you check? Did you review the 3 rayas that are the real one? You don't even look at it, right? Because it's not a Tiva Torah, it's not a Pusik, it's not a Torah, it's not a Ktasa. What's going on with you? Because the Choshen get both of the Pusik, right? You're a bunch of hypocrites. This guy, I think that this is an amazing kasha. Anyone that never...
You saying basically
It's a great question. If I should him today, you would think he was nuts.
I'm playing by your rules.
No, it's a deeper question. It's saying that the original founder of your religion wasn't the Chacham. It was very simple. It was...
No one will believe him no one will believe you if he followed the Teresh
What is that the ideal?
and what he said came to pass, and
Right.
Yeah, that would be, that's true.
You read the Quran, it says things like this. He said it's going to rain and it rained. Okay, I do the same thing. He said that this king will die and the other king will become, and that's what happened, and everyone believed him. But you people don't even take, it's not the problem that you don't take me seriously. Don't take this whole kind of thing seriously, right? Your whole thing is that you take this kind of thing seriously. Some guy came and said to Parasend, let my people go, and then he split the sea, and of course, most of the Chachmei Adar probably also over the Tzunei Adar were saying that it's some trick, and the few Tmimim that followed him, they're the ones that you praise Adi Mazed, the companions of the Prophet. The few Narunim that followed him. And someday he goes and he calls his friends the companions. I forgot how it's in Arabic, like the real Chassidim. And everyone else is just low lives. They're not real. Right?
Yeah, but it seemed the time was pretty cool.
Wait. So this is like one answer. It's not okay, I'm not going to talk about that answer. The point is, this is a great kasha. I don't think a good teretz is to say, but our miracles were true. Okay, I don't like that teretz. Now, no problem for you. You can go on with it. I think that the kasha is better than that teretz. So, I think that this is a very good kasha. And I have 6 teretz, which means that none of them are very good. But what I think is something like, so what do I think? I'll tell you the kitzur minimum what I think about this kasha. I think it's a very serious kasha, and that you have to think about it very seriously. So what I think is something like this. You'll remember that the point of any of this Torah thing is to make things better. Okay, all the instructions that I gave you that you can have more money is only one level. There's also Elam Haba and so on, and your soul. Okay, but the point is still to make things better and more true, and more beautiful. That is the point. Okay. That if you don't accept that, then nothing starts. If you think that it's only because that you only follow the Torah because God, the Ratzon Hashem, according to me, you're a Kodesh, and but the Eved you're Mitzvah of Dominion because I'm a good guy, I'm pluralistic, but Lamaisa you're fake. That's right. Now, he's not masking, but what should I do? Kitzur. Now, therefore, what I think is very, but I think that, but I do think, but you're right, and then you have to say, okay, very nice, but Moshe Rabbeinu or whoever, whichever religion you believe in, did something like this, right? He didn't say Ma'adrush. I mean, he did say Ma'adrush if you read it, if you understand it. But he also did all the Mavsim and all the sticks and all the miracles and all these random things. And basically just, it seems like that, right? So it seems like this. It seems like you read the Chumash and it's the most simplistic thing, right? And like if someone would do that, you would basically laugh at him. Not we would laugh at him. Specifically the people that claim to be the biggest believers in the Torah would laugh at him even more, right? For various reasons. The reason that I gave before, that it's not sophisticated enough, is only one of them. But there's other reasons, like because they're just dogmatic believers in whatever they were taught. So of course they wouldn't believe this new guy that comes and has a new God, right? The conservative people, there are all kinds of reasons, but this is the question, right? And I think that the answer can't be that, okay, therefore you should follow every upstart that claims that God spoke to him. Man, hello. It's true that we shouldn't. And I think it's also true that this is also like a question that doesn't make any sense, right? Because if I would have been him, then I would have been him and not me. But if I would have been in the times of whichever prophet you believe in very much, and he would come in the style that this guy comes on YouTube, I would go, wow, it's kind of cool how dumb people are that he has a few hundred chassidim, the guy. Besides that, I don't learn anything from it, right? That's what I would say, and I would say it to your original prophet too, I think. I mean, again, if I would be then I wouldn't be me. And the situation would be different. But if it would be me from now and that from then, the way you're imagining it, the answer is correct.
If I claim to be the person who follows after Moses, I'm not Moses. In that way.
Yeah, well, no, I'm saying even if someone would come to me and say, I have a sun miracle for you, and I've split the sea, and I'm going to make a big thunderstorm on a mountain, I'm not very impressed by that either. And
if you saw it in real life, you wouldn't believe it.
What?
If you saw that in real life, you wouldn't be impressed.
No.
I would. No.
I will not convert to his religion. I've heard this story before. Not interesting. You would decide that, but I won't.
Story, if I saw it myself.
Nachon, you would and I won't. But just to be clear, these stories don't actually happen that way. They always, and it's recorded in the Torah that many people disbelieved Moshe. So obviously it wasn't as clear as you pretend that it was. So there's always like, the Chassidim believed it, and the Mistagdim were like, nice, yeah, I was there, I was stuck there, but I still don't believe it. There's always Mistagdim like that, and there's that kind of people. You could call them Akshonim, Apikonim, but it's not like, there isn't any kind of revelation that solves that problem that ever happened in history. Including in the Torah, there's always people that said like, me, who are you? Doesn't have we're smart guys, and they're recording the Torah. They say, like, okay, so you said. They were there by the Mount Sinai or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, okay, so he didn't disagree. We get into arguments about details. The point is, I think that this argument is true. And I think that we have to have a much better thought about all of this. And I'll have a lot of them. I don't know which of them is true or to what extent they're true, but I think that we have to think a few things like this. Maybe I'll jump all the way to the last thing that I think. The last thing that I think is, I'm going to tell you the previous things. The last thing that I think is that this is just a wrong pshat. It's not true. And that's what Shmuel was trying to say. I think this is extremely wrong, and it's not what Moshe ever did, or anyone. In other words, if you think this guy, let's understand something like this. Let's talk about this Abdullah guy, because it's easier than talking about the Jewish thing. This Abdullah guy, he thinks that he's basically Muhammad, and he's basically he's being sent the Quran, instead of the other guy saying Pshutim, and they have Machlokes, and he's very clear. Just like he said a Pasuk, and it was true, and it's God, straight to him, he does the same exact thing. He has a new Pasuk. Or he even says the old Pasuk, and it means in. As simple as can be, right? And he's, in his imagination, you're just a weirdo, that you could only believe a religion after it's 300 years old. Because the first 200 years, it's simplistic. Then there's all kind of philosophies and Torahs and shit does mean. Then you start becoming, right? Every religion this is one of arguments of people like this, right? Every religion, at least most religions, start basically like this. There's a very simple message, and there's some simple chassidim around the guy that has the message. And then a few hundred years later, there's people that are born into it, or even that convert to it. It's not necessarily born into it, but they're more complicated people, and they have all kind of fancy philosophies and theologies. So basically, theologians are the kind of people that would never convert to a new religion, only to old ones. And for some reason, that makes sense to them.
So maybe we should figure out what.
Who?
Maybe we should try to figure out what form it takes later on. Maybe that's the point.
Okay.
Maybe that's the correct one.
And they're very good. That's one option. One option is to say yes, very good. And we're the kind of people that only convert to religions 400 years old, because that's when they may start making sense.
Try
They mean something.
If this guy will concede to having a religion for 400 years, no problem, we'll start taking his claims seriously. That's the proof.
Augustine first, he has to have
Yeah, but I think that's a little bit too much, too easy.
I consider Mormonism viable because of that. You have 300 years of people.
It wasn't this mass religion all the way back then.
Yeah, but you get. Wait.
Like,
Wait.
Islam was pretty fast.
Yeah, but Arabs and Maroon. Wait.
It's a real religion.
No, but wait. This is a practical answer. Look.
It deserves to be taken seriously. It can be dumb, but it can be taken seriously.
Every generation. They got associated one
No, but Chassidus does not in a religion. It's not. Wait. I have another sheet. I told you I'm not going to finish this sheet today. I'm just going to make you meshega with kashas. See, this is not in a religion. It's a reform or some kind of reinvigoration of an old religion. That's an easier thing to do. It's not the same thing. You don't have to have this claim. Could be, but it's not this problem. They don't have this problem because they don't even claim to be a new religion. To claim to be a new religion, or even something like the Mashiach of an old religion, is a much more stronger claim than what things like Chassidus or anyone else is doing. It's very different. I'm gonna get bigger bags that don't make so much crunches. It's very annoying. You're gonna hear the video. You can hear most of the time.
From what?
The koilas of Rekem. Yeah, makes a lot of noise. Anyways, until next time buy bigger bags. It only takes once.
It's good though.
It's great.
It's getting good.
It's good. I enjoyed it,
No, it's great. I'm just saying. My point is that I think that you could have some practical answer and say okay, you're a conservative guy, you believe in the cumulative wisdom, and you say, but we don't. So in other words, then you shouldn't celebrate Shavuos. You should celebrate some holiday, celebrating like Weimar you should celebrate, but not Shavuos, right? Because Weimar is what happens 1,000 years after the original revelation, when it already makes sense. But Shavuos is the 3 guys around the mountain. Okay, 600,000 guys, doesn't matter. Around the mountain with a guy saying simple stuff and saying God spoke to him. Okay. Nobody among us would go for that religion, besides for you, if there's impressive enough lights. But most, I wouldn't.
But if he's really from God, he can figure it out.
No problem. So that's one answer. It's not a good answer. No, it's not a good answer because it doesn't answer this claim of this accusation of hypocrisy, right? Even those complicated people, they're all going on. They do celebrate Shavuos, right? They're going on around the meaning of the original revelation, and there's so much depth in it, and all of that. And then you confront them with the original revelation as it was perceived by people at the time. You're right? The Rebbe Melech says, no, right? The Rebbe Melech wrote a letter making this exact argument, right? Someone wrote to Rebbe Melech of Lezhensk that he doesn't believe in the Chassidish Rebbe. They're a bunch of fakers and Michigan and losers. And he said, yeah, people like you said the same about Moshe and about David. And he said, every time, Achel Moshe Kedoshim to you. The next generation, they're Meshabayach. They said the Tzaddik. The previous Tzaddikim are great, but the Hantik Tzaddikim are fake. The point is to believe in the Hantik Tzaddikim, not in the previous ones. This is a very strong argument, but it's making the same it has the same structure as argument, right? So you can't say, yeah, because when people are alive, it's proven if they're true. This like idea of Achan Emes Kedoshim actually has a lot of wisdom in it, if you think like you people are saying. We say, how could you know when someone's alive? Firstly, he could become like a tzedeki after 80 years if he wants. And this is the medrash, right? We don't claim any living person as a man of God only after he's dead. Right? We don't say Avram only after Avram is dead, because it doesn't work that way. Okay, but it's still, there's claim of hypocrisy, like this claim that therefore you're not taking the idea of someone being a man of God seriously. There's a real problem here. You say, well, I do take it seriously, but I just think it's not you. But that's like an excuse. It's like everything. Theoretically, I believe in prophecy, but there's no real prophet that I would ever accept. Besides for one that's dead and I can't really check. It's something very problematic here. Okay, I think that these practical answers are practical answers, but they don't solve the basic tension that this kind of question raises. So what does resolve it somewhat?
The first reason we give it an Navi is because he's a Navi and not just go for his ideas.
Okay, but again, the Nevi'im do say that you should believe in them because they're a Navi.
It's like you're not in Torah, it's like you're there. It's the opposite. You're saying if you weren't there, it's better.
I don't know, if you're there.
Amazing. Amazing, right? Everyone that says, I believe in it because I was by Mount Torah, no, I believe it because I was not by Mount Torah. If I would be there, I would look, the kugel wasn't so good, the seltzer was already warm by the time I got there. The whole Mount Torah, yeah, it was a good event, but good as Claudius, so. Oh, after 500 years, people start talking about it, okay, it becomes a big thing. Yeah, it's a real question, this. I think that we have to have a better kind of answer, and the answer begins, like I started beginning from the end, it begins by explaining that our imagination is false. And this Abdullah's imagination is false. His Muhammad never came and spoke in his way. You know how I know? Because he actually, he might be, Muhammad also only had a few hundred chassidim when he was starting off, and then he became big, so you can never know. No, that's not the answer. I think that's the first answer that I'm not so happy with. I think that their answer is because the real way, firstly, Muhammad isn't a little bit that, that's why we Jews think of him as a false prophet, for the most part. Besides for a few weird Jews, I think he was a true prophet. Like Rabbi, what was the guy's name from Taiman? But anyways, that wrote to the Rambam. No, you know who I mean. Anyways, the person who the Rambam wrote to Gereth Taiman to, he wrote a book saying that maybe Muhammad was a true prophet. And that's why the Rambam answered this.
They're risking it this time.
So, just sent to the Arabs, whatever, he had Arabs the Torah. Now, but most Jews don't believe that because they say, okay, but there's still a problem. But I think that even talking about that example, I would say something like, it's not true that the original prophet was a weirdo that claimed to be a prophet. How do I know this? Well, like you said, because he was successful, but it's not because he was successful. Let's assume that normal people, he actually managed to talk to normal people, not just the cultists, like the people that are agreed to be part of his cult. Sometimes he fights with them, sometimes there's all kinds of ways of convincing them. Maybe those ways of convincing would not be very convincing to you. But within the structure that he is living, it obviously made sense, right? And what I mean to say is that this guy's like this. If someone comes and says a shtickle Torah, he says a shir, and he's masber a shtickle Quran correctly, and you're like, yeah, it's a good pshat. Good by itself, it's good as a pshat, it's true, I accept it. If someone just is the Quran himself, it says, Koyamar Hashem, blah, 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 worship me and follow me and you'll have a good life, you're like, that's nonsense. But the Quran is those kinds of sentences, that's all it is, right? But this is how those sentences sound like after 1,000 years, that nobody speaks that original language, that nobody knows their conventions of poetry, their conventions of preachers. It's very possible that in Muhammad's day, that's how every darshan said. He wasn't a Ma'al Shashidas darshan, just had better drushas than most people. He wasn't doing something qualitative, like in his form wasn't different than the form that the next guy, the pagan prophet, the next town was saying. They were both saying the nice Mr. drushas and somewhat poetic meter, and he did the same thing. He had better content, and he was really from God, according to the Muslims. Therefore, he was accepted, and he was more successful. But you have this weird imagination that because there's obviously all those other books were destroyed, because who remembers those guys, right? But you would think that the way to be a prophet is to speak in this way. No, the way to be a prophet is to speak like a normal person, to explain to people in ways that they understand. Of course, there's always tons of conventions. Even nowadays, there's not only one rhetorical register that you could speak in. You could speak like a Chassidish darshan, you could speak like literature darshan, you could speak like a evangelist, you could speak like a Stama guy that talks on the radio and gives his political opinions, you could make a podcast, you could do a lot of things. None of them are pretending to be something that doesn't exist anymore, or some kind of convention or some kind of form that happens to be the way that your ancient prophets spoke. move on. And I would say the same thing, and this is my biggest chiddush. I would say the same thing about the Tanakh.
Rabbi Yehuda Nasi wrote the Mishnah, not another Chumash.
Right, and we'll talk in a second about Pascha Nevuah, which I think is just about the form, it's not about the content, as the Chachamim himself explicitly say. What I would say is something like this. Right, we imagine that Yirmiyah Novi, right, people imagine that Yirmiyah came and wrote these nice poetries about how everyone is immoral and they should do tshuva, and he wrote it in this prophetic form, and he said, Komer Hashem, and therefore he must be doing something qualitatively different, entirely different from what your Mashgiach is doing when he says, Rabbi Yisai, you're not having a good life because you're not acting correctly, stop cheating on your wife, and maybe you'll have a better life. Right? Mashgiach doesn't say that because he doesn't talk about real problems, but that's what he should have said, right? Yirmiyah said things like that, right? Stop worshipping Avodah Zarah. It didn't mean Bechinas Avodah Zarah, right? You're in the real one, right? So
that's what today we try to say shot that it means beginners of Israel, because we're like always.
We're living in the Olam Bechinas. We're not real, but yeah. But you understand what I'm saying? What I'm saying is, and therefore what I think is that I have a big claim. What's my big claim about the ancients, right? What is my big claim? Yitzchok Lowy Yeshiva has a few Yisodas Hamena. One of them is called the Menos Chachamim. And what it means is, not that we believe everything that the Chachamim said, right? That's not a Menos Chachamim, that's, what do we call that? We have to find the word. What? Shemiyah? No, it's like, that's not, well, that's Pesiyam and the Chaldev, exactly. Well, something like it. Not exactly, it's like more obligation, right? The concept of authority. We don't believe in authority. Well, we believe in something called teaching, right? We believe that maybe, like the Badei Shuruv said, maybe there is a God. Remember the story of the Badei Shuruv? I said it in one of my speeches by the campaign. Right, it was a big Kapikoris. They came to all the Rabbunim and nobody was able to convince him. He wrote long speeches on Slapstack with everyone. Nobody let him work. And then he came to the Heilige Badei Shuruv, the Kedushas Levi, Rabbi Levi Yitzchok Badei, and the Kedushas Levi was walking back and forth, categorically, like, and the guy was telling him all his kashas, and he was, like a Chassidish Yid. And after all his thing, and the Kedushas Levi walked him and said, yeah, I hear, but maybe there is a God. That's all. Maybe there's a point. Maybe. No, it didn't mean. People think that it means Pascal. I don't think it means Pascal. No, what he meant is like, actually, he just wanted to open him when the guy's so closed. Hot kashas, all these kashas are closed. Maybe, yeah. I'm not saying maybe, and therefore you should make a rager. Just maybe, yeah. Listen for a second. There's a guys that claiming they have something to say. Maybe, yeah. Right? I like this maybe very much because it's like I said, it's opening. So my basic belief is that all these ancient people that were taught very much in our societies to like say, they were weirdos and those days people believe this, as if that's an answer for why they believe it, right? So then maybe he's trying to tell us something. Doesn't mean that he's always right, probably not, he's a human being. Does that mean we should accept him on faith? No, well, you should listen, right? Now, since Shavuos is we talk about Torah Shebeksav, not Torah Shebapeh, I want to make the claim that this is also true for the Chumash and for the Nevi'im and so on. I don't think that the best way of reading them is in the take it or leave it way, as like this is the authority, God said so, and therefore you got to accept it. If you don't accept it, you're not Pekoiris or Achshasha Pekoiris, and that's the way it's read. I think it should be read as teachers, like Torah, literally, as a teaching. Maybe saying something. And if you say it's divine, okay, what isn't divine? That's not a very interesting claim. Of course, it means something that they say it's divine, Amin Hashemayim, but what it doesn't mean is therefore you have to accept it. What it means is that this is about very real stuff. Please listen to it. Very different than therefore you have to accept it. And then there's like the only modalities are either you accept it or you don't accept it. And if you think of prophets as just people that are struggling with certain human problems, including about God, or maybe mostly about God, because that's a big human problem, right? And they're expressing it in the register of their time, of course. They're speaking in prophetic first. I'm not saying that they wrote philosophy books, although some of them did, like the book of Eve, and maybe it's not prophecy, and the book of Keles and so on, which are still part of the Bible, part of the Kisvei HaKodesh, but they're just philosophy books, right? But even Yirmiyah and even Moshe, they're just giving thoughts, and they're trying to teach you something. He said it, right? I always tell everyone that if you believe that God wrote the Torah, then it might not be interesting, because God, who understands God, maybe he has a Mishigas, that's not Hashem. But if you're a Pekoris that thinks a human wrote the Torah, then you have to read it. Because there's a guy that actually thought this made sense, right? Yeah, for sure. 4 people. But that really doesn't matter because this has to do with Hilchos Nevuah, not the point for now. But it doesn't. The fact that it's ascribed to God doesn't mean that it is not that humans didn't write it. It's not a state of these two things, but for that you have to understand a lot of theology. And I'm not doing that now, but
Also, is it possible
point
that
is-
from Bereshit to Devarim you see like different type of language specifically because
yeah,
of
of course. That's like we say, it's speaking to different people, it's resolving different problems. It sometimes changes according to the reality. Of course, the point is not that this is. The point is just that this is something you should listen to. You should listen to it because it's people, and we assume that are smarter than us. How do I know? Because you wrote a book, I didn't. I mean, number one. And what?
You wrote a book editing his book.
A book?
If you wrote a book editing and respacing his book.
Who, me? Yeah. That's an addition of the book. It's not a book. It's not the book. I don't claim to be the book. And you should listen to it. That's all. Understand? And in this sense, the idea of Torah Mashmaim as the only meaning of the Torah can only have a meaning. Like people say, otherwise it's folklore. By the way, what's wrong with folklore? Folklore has a lot of wisdom in it. Folklore is just a word that some romantic made up to explain the wisdom of folklore, by the way. But right, we have this like literature thing. Either it's God or it's folklore. I don't know. Maybe it's both. I don't know. Maybe it's neither. Maybe these categories are weird.
People don't like these things because it's threatening. It's that we don't have to be.
You know why it's threatening? Because then maybe it is true. That's the big threat. Even the most from guy, he basically thinks that Torah is nonsense. God told it. Maybe it's true. In other words, maybe, right? It also means kfir in a lot of things that you believe otherwise, right? Maybe it's true that it would be good to have Shemitah every 7 years. We're sure there has to be a nest, right? You ask me what's a nest? It doesn't say that that's a nest. It says there's a bracha. Bracha is not a nest. Bracha is what the whole Torah is about. Giving you blessing, make things work. Doesn't say that it's a nest. Maybe it's correct. Maybe it works. But we're so sure that if sure doesn't work, because we know exactly how nature works, and everything. It can't work. So it must be God's mishagas. No. Maybe that's how it works. Now, of course, that's also what it means, because when you take too much ownership over things, then things don't work. Acknowledging God's management of the world or nature is a better way of living. You have more money if you do that. And maybe it does work, but very few from people are ready to entertain the thought that maybe it's true. They're very comfortable thinking that it's probably not true. Not true in the human sense, but Torah Hashemayim. So Torah Hashemayim is what makes us not understand the Torah. Because you'll remember the understanding, this by the way, this is not my part. Okay, I have to finish here. I have to finish. I did enough clickbait. I'm sticking for half an hour on this point, and I'm enough. I'm getting enough clickbait, but I'm going to give you a source, since we have to say everything in the name of Chassidus Tzadikim, otherwise you think that I'm Apikoides. I'll tell you who says this.
I think Apikoides is better because I'm taking it. Not God.
I've already told you many times. I want to read the description of Matan Torah from the biggest Apikoides that was there. Otherwise, it's not interesting, right? Yeah. Of course, the believers say things. They always say things. Right? And this said the Heilige Rebbe Rashab of Lubavitch. So the Rebbe Rashab was kind of worried about this problem. He, not for himself, but obviously he was worried about it. And in a few places he says that there's two things called a minna and seichel. And for him, a minna means what we call Torah Mashmaim, or not exactly, because probably has a more complicated understanding of what a minna is, and seichel means understanding things. And he says many times that theoretically, an apikoides, someone who doesn't start from the minna, would have a better haskalah, would have better idea selekis than a maimon. So there's a few times in his writings. Why? Because he's not biased. Very obvious, right? We are doing learning chassidus, but it's kind of fake. We try to understand God, but if we don't understand, we're still going to believe in it. So we're kind of never going to really understand. The only guy that's really going to understand is the person that starts without believing. Maybe then he'll believe also, because there's something to believe also. But that's and then he has all kinds of Torahs to try to solve this. Like, what do we do with this problem? He's kind of worried about this problem. He's trying to say, what do we do? We could still somehow work with both. He's worried about this.
So this is what Chizda Kreskas's problem with Mitzvah Yisrael, right?
That is.
If it's a mitzvah, it can exist without the God on top of it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
My
Complicated. Yeah. I'm gonna try to solve that problem. Point is, people have noticed this problem, and this is why I claim that. So now you have to. I didn't finish the main thing. So when I say Torah Mashmaim, the answer to my clickbait title, what is the value of Torah Mashmaim and what is the hurt of it? The hurt of it is obvious, because it makes you not understand the Torah. Then it's not defined either. It's just some random getchke. But also the value of it is what I just explained to you. That you have to realize, we have to try to read it things this way. You have to realize that in the time of Moshe, or in the context of Moshe, or in the context of Jesus, if you're a Christian or whatever it is, he was not a weirdo. He was not a Breslever. Moshe Bani was the biggest Litvak. Not a Breslever. What's a Breslever? When I mean Breslever, I mean someone that comes and says, like the world says, kacha v'kacha, but I have a bumper sticker that says Einad Mulvade, and that changes everything. And if you don't believe me, you're not Bekoides. So my cult are the people that believe in this. You know what I mean? I hope, right? And people imagine Moshe Rabbeinu was basically this, because the whole world didn't believe in. He had a bumper sticker saying, and he went around hooting his horn, nach, whatever his belief was. But the point is not, of course he had a better belief than nach, but it was functionally the same kind of Mashiach. Everyone thought it was Mashiach. And he went to Baal and he said, and it worked, right? That's the basic Breslev claim that we said in the name of this Abdullah before. And I'm here to tell you that that's false. We should stop imagining Moshe this way. Moshe was an Amalek guy trying to convince people of a truth. Of course, he convinced them in the language that they understood. Maybe they weren't great philosophers, so he made miracles for them. Maybe God made miracles in order to speak to them in their language. God doesn't make miracles for us because we would not believe in them. It would be a waste of time. Not like the Ramban says he doesn't do miracles because some random reason. He doesn't do miracles because it's not the language that we speak. I know the guys that work with miracles. They're a bunch of Meshiguim. God doesn't speak in Meshiguim. God speaks always through this. No problem. I'm not talking to them.
If you would have continued always, then this wouldn't have be a problem.
It would, because it's taka stupid.
If you did it every 10 years, it wouldn't be a problem.
No, it would. Firstly, it would become nature. That's nonsense. The miracle, and there's fundamental problem.
Another thing that never happened before.
Yeah, and then you have to keep on raising the bar, and we're going to end up with the world has to, there's a reason why the world isn't the way it is. I mean, there's a sheet how much shit you can make it. You could split the sea once and twice and 10 seas. At some point, we're going to be living in outer space. You got to make something. No, I don't think so. I think that the reason these things don't work is because they're not supposed to work. God's supposed to speak to everyone in the way that he understands it, in a normal way. When Moshe did miracles, right, like Pare said, there was nothing weird about Moshe coming and claiming a miracle. Everyone was claiming miracles. He was just the best miracle guy around. Nowadays, you have to be the best.
Cool.
Very good. That guy could only make a steak and a steak. He can make the sticks round the sticks. Givaldik, you're a better miracle. But this was a language that made sense. And obviously, by the way, if it made sense, maybe there was some science about it, there was some ways of learning, there were some schools of how to make miracles and magic. And Moshe didn't claim to be entirely categorically different, although some of the Rishonim thinks this. I don't think it's correct. He said, I'm the best, and therefore my God is better than yours, and I'm explaining about God clearer. I have less mistakes in my theory of God than yours, because my theory works more than yours. But he wasn't coming and saying, in other words, the Moshe that you have to imagine something like this. Nowadays everyone believes in AI. Moshe it would be someone that has a better one. Not that it has a totally different thing. The scientist sounds weird because we have weird kind of science that don't connect to anything. But the point is, there's no reason to imagine. We have this weird thing. Let me finish.
Better magic trick.
Let me finish. No, not a better magic trick. The truer understanding of reality. A truer understanding of reality. He didn't do any magic tricks, Moshe. Chaz v'shalom. He only did things that showed that he had a better command of reality than the Egyptians, and he did. But if he would tell us nowadays his understanding, we probably wouldn't understand it because it wasn't mitzrish. We don't speak the language. There's nobody that speaks the language, and you don't even though you would speak the language, you don't know the concepts. You don't know what it means. But we only have like shurash. We have like the zeicher Torah. We don't have the Torah, right? We have like remnants, and we try to interpret it, and it has been reinterpreted in so many different registers, and nobody knows anything anymore. But the important thing is that we should stop imagining it. We have this, I'm just going to say this point, and all your catches you'll think of at night. We have this weird thing of assuming that our distance from the language and the way in which it worked is essential to it, and essential to what it is. And we forget that at every time, in every period, and every time when it's real, it's precisely the opposite. The reason why we shouldn't believe people that pretend that do miracles in the style of the Bible nowadays is precisely because in the times of the Bible, it wasn't the Bible, it was Namal. Once you're out of sync with the reality, then you're worse, you're not better. We should believe, and we do believe people that speak to us in our language. Of course, they could explain the previous revelations, and they could explain how everything means that, and so on. But you can't assume that the fact that we speak differently, we have different things that work. By the way, there's some people that maybe that works. No problem, speak to them in that way. I don't say. I have different theories for why it doesn't work for most people about it. I can give you a lot of dushas. I don't think there's something wrong. If you have people that are going to believe you by claiming that a snake spoke to you, and that's the only thing they believe to become good people, you should tell them a snake spoke to you, 100%. But for us, it doesn't work, and there's nothing wrong with it not working. And what does work, and you have to stop imagining that what is interesting is the weirdness. What is interesting is the trueness, not the weirdness. Makes sense? That's my drusha, and that's in the way in which it both helps and hurts to believe in Torah and Shaman. And everyone should have a happy Yom Tashvias, and eat a lot of cheesecake, and have a lot of good harvest, and shine.